Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
Feeling good, dog. I'm feeling good. 1995 Royal Rumble, if you will, baby. If you got one bad thing to say about this, we're going to commence to fighting.
But what we can agree on is the Royal Rumble 1995. Holy cow, did we get a lot of feedback about this. We threw it up on Twitter and said, hey, if you've got a question about Royal Rumble 95, ask it here. And man, we got blown up. People are fired up about this episode.
They are. Good reason to be, because it was one of the best Rumbles of all time.
Well, I don't know about that.
Hey, you know what? I think if anything holds up over time, and watching it back, the story holds up. It's all about story, and the story held up.
Well, listen, I can't argue any of that. I do want to apologize. Last week we had every intention of letting you guys ask some questions here. And that was our intention for Royal Rumble 1990. We got a little bit of a curveball last week, right in the middle of recording. We learned of the passing of Rocky Johnson, and to say that changed the tone and tenor of our show would be a massive, massive understatement. But we've got lots of fun questions about 1990. So I thought before we got going into 1995, we'd circle back a little bit and let people pick your brain for 1990. What say you?
I say go for it, man. I'm ready.
By the way, if you haven't already, check it out in the archives. Royal Rumble 1990. Such a fun show. I mean, so much meat on the bone here. Mayhem would write in, can you comment on Rick Martel's spray can gimmick? Whose idea was it? What exactly was he spraying?
Arrogance. The lovely scent of arrogance.
Okay, but what
it was a takeoff on, in the 50s, Gorgeous George, the original Gorgeous George Wagner, had a valet that came to the ring. And before George would get into the ring, the valet would go around the ring with this atomizer, and he would spray perfume so that the ring smelled appropriate before George would enter. And it was a takeoff on that. And instead of doing the atomizer like George did, thought of it would be better and just more visual to do. It's like you always saw those old commercials of the pesticides, and they would use that. That's what they used. You would fill that up with pesticide and spray for roaches and shit around your house back in the olden days. And it was just a little different presentation, a different approach. Arrogance.
James Stewart had a variation of a question that we got a lot. Was Vince really over-tanned from the Orlando beaches, and that's why Tony did play-by-play? Easy for me to say. Shivani has said on the podcast before that he was not supposed to do commentary on this show. But when Vince arrived to the building, he said, hey, do you have your tuxedo? And he said, yes, sir. And he said, okay, cool. You're on the call tonight. And he thinks that maybe that was because, the beach had been too kind to Vince. What say you?
Well, I say that we might as well get some use out of Tony.
Okay. Steve Frazier writes, what's the giant book that Fink had in his lap?
What?
All right.
Okay, y'all are way too fucking observant. I wasn't looking at the Fink. He had a giant book in his lap? I have no idea.
This is from Eric. Did Butch Reed invent the Royal Rumble?
No, that's one thing that Butch did not invent. He invented the Rumble Royale. Completely different concept. A lot of people get confused about that. So I'm sorry, but not the Royal Rumble. It was the Rumble Royale.
Lots of variations of this question too from Josh Weekly. He writes, why in some years did the wrestlers not have their theme music and in some years they did?
It was experimental, and it was something later on when we did the music for everybody. I think that added to it because instantly, even if you didn't see them, you reacted. And early on, you had to wait until they cleared, until the entire arena saw them, and we didn't have the big trons and stages at that time. So I think that adding the music as time went on really helped it.
Lots of variations of this. We understand hashtag Hogan must pose, but given where we were headed, would it have made sense in hindsight for the Ultimate Warrior to have won the match here?
Fuck no.
Why not?
Well, okay, because again, Warrior was going to go over Wrestlemania 6 in Toronto, and this was kind of a swan song for Hulk at the time. I think that shoving him down their throat too much at that time with where we were in the build of the Warrior, I don't think it would have made sense.
Tony Barker writes in, why was the Tito Santana / Rick Martel feud never settled on a major pay-per-view? Great question, by the way.
Well, it's not everything was settled on pay-per-view. That was settled in live events in arenas across the country. Main event anywhere in the world.
Puss Bucket writes in, when was the decision made to have DiBiase enter as number 1? And was it a callback to 89 when he bought the number 30 spot?
Well, it was, because it was what's the worst spot that you could have, and that was number 1. So going from playing off of last year, yes, that's exactly what it was. And Teddy was someone that we felt could also last a while. And you think, oh my God, he's going to last this thing, and then boom, dump him on his ass.
Lots of questions about Rick Rude coming out prematurely. He comes out when there's like 10 seconds left. Intentional? Mistake? Anybody notice or care?
I don't think anybody noticed or cared. It was probably a timing issue and somebody just sending him. Maybe me. I don't know.
Let me just say, Mark from Tampa really gets it. Andre never had entrance music. Hypothetically, if he did, what should it have sounded like?
I forget my Andre shit. Andre boss. Poo-poo.
That was terrible. Hey,
I was terrible. I forget my old shit sometimes.
Yeah, we've seen SmackDown. Drew Smith writes, can you explain the purpose of Hogan and Warrior going crisscross on the ropes? What does this actually do? It's been bothering me for 30 years. Literally every 5th question is about the fucking crisscross.
God damn, it's a move. You're trying to gain the advantage on your opponent. You're trying to catch him for a tackle. You're trying to catch them just be a step off. It's like a challenge. Okay, you hit the ropes and I'll hit the ropes, and let's see. We're waiting for somebody to make that first move. Drop down, tackle, get it again. Boom. Grab a headlock. Let's go. It's simple shit, man. Why does that bother you? Who asked that question?
Lots of people. It's like,
okay, lots of people. Why does that bother you? Enjoy it. It's action.
It's action. Running the ropes is action.
It is action.
Jonathan Addo wants to know, do you recall your job duties for this show in particular, and what did those duties entail? Of course, he means besides being on camera.
God. For that show, I probably was just worried about my on-camera stuff. At that point, yeah, I was.
So who's running Gorilla and sending guys at this point?
Probably J.J. Dillon.
What would not Bruce, but Vince have been doing during the show? Where would he be situated?
Vince probably would have been all over the place, just kind of making sure that everything was lined up and everywhere. You know, it was a lot different then. First of all, you didn't have all of the RF communication where everybody can have a headset and wander all over the building and be in contact. You know, you didn't have that. It was, if you needed to communicate with someone, you had to go find them and talk to them face to face. We had radios, but shit, give those to old wrestler agents and they get lost within the first 2 weeks, and that's just sunk costs. So you've got to run around and actually do the work versus having 10 million assistants and different people doing the running for you.
Mark from Tampa is really on his shit. He's breaking down the film here like it's the fucking JFK video. And he spots after Hogan eliminates Haku at 2 hours, 41 minutes and 34 seconds, what he believes to be a WWE official sitting ringside, giving the cue for Tito to be eliminated. How are eliminations done? Was there a guy sitting ringside? We've heard before that, you know, they would, you know, look to the ring announcer, and if he was waving his tie or had a pencil in his mouth.
Mark, you would be incorrect.
So what was the cue here?
There was no cue. The guys knew the match. They knew when they went out. There's nobody down there giving them cues. No.
We got lots of questions about this, and I know what you're going to say, but I feel like if I don't ask, I'm going to get hit with more questions about it. Can we please talk about the yellow Intercontinental belt? Appeared right around this time. It was only used until Wrestlemania VI. Why the color changes for the belts for Warrior only, and whatever happened to the yellow IC after Wrestlemania VI?
Well, the color changes were for Warrior because he was a colorful character, and we just wanted to change it up a little bit. I think we had purple and yellow and just some different colors. I don't think that any of them other than the yellow actually got out. We had the purple WWF championship for Warrior for a time, but the idea was to do some different colors for him because he was a colorful character.
And what became of it is Warrior held it in his private collection, then eventually sold it. I think it's with a private collector in Boston. But Warrior, before he passed away, would try to sell other belts as the actual yellow Intercontinental and just rip off fans for tens of thousands of dollars. But the real one, I believe to be somewhere in the Boston area. Lots of interesting questions about some guys that we've already talked about ad nauseum. You can catch most of these answers in the archives. Without further ado, let's get to the topic at hand today. Royal Rumble 1995. And we're covering it, man, just a couple of days after the 25-year anniversary went down at the USF Sundome in Tampa, Florida on January 22nd. I can't believe this is real, but we drew 10,000 fans, less than Royal Rumble 94, which was 14,500, but more than what you would draw in 1996 with 9,600. 10,000 fans attending a Royal Rumble. Boy, we're a long way from that now, are we not?
Yeah. By shit. 3-4 times easily.
It's unbelievable how much the business has grown since, but here it feels like, man, we are at the bottom of the barrel in 1995. This is the first time you've seen this in a long time, but you know, let's take a look at your average attendance. So your average attendance for a show in January 94 is 2,880 fans. We're up to 2,900 fans in January of 95. Your average gate in January 94 is only $39,320. We're up $5,000 to $44,320 in January 95. We're not selling out any of our shows. And ratings are actually down 17%, going from an average 2.3 in January 94 to an average of 1.9 in January of 95. When I just run those numbers past you, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, it was a down time. I mean, there was just a rebuilding time, and it was a period in the business where we were on a downtrend and trying to dig out of that hole that the trial had kind of put us in. So it was a struggle.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to come up with any other word for it than that. I mean, the show itself here is going to do a 1.0 buy rate, which is higher than the 94 Rumble, which did a 0.9, but lower than 1.1 that you would get for 1996. If you had to just compare and contrast, not the entire years, we'll call it just first quarters. First quarter of 94 compared to first quarter of 95 compared to first quarter of 96. Where do you think they would rank, at least in your memory?
Well, I'm sorry, what?
Year over year, where the business is. It feels like 94, 95, 96, the first quarter is not your best business. And it feels like business is down here. So if we're just trying to compare, not the creative, but the economics, the health of the business, in early 94 compared to early 95 compared to early 96, are we trending up? Are we treading water? Are we trending down?
I think we were treading water, and it was a situation where we were constantly looking for that next hit. We were looking for what is that next marker that's going to take it over the top? What's that next WrestleMania moment? A la WrestleMania 1, a la WrestleMania 3. And since probably, I would have to say, WrestleMania 6 with Hogan and Warrior was the last mega show, I guess you could say, that had a lot of buzz to it, and I think we were just kind of struggling trying to get that next hit. What's the next big thing going to be? And working towards it. And it was, you're digging out of a hole, so you're not starting on top. You're starting at the dead bottom, and it was just a constant struggle. But I think that we were treading water at this time.
The show we're covering here from 1995 is the 8th Royal Rumble, but they switched things up here a little bit. In the prior Royal Rumbles, every 120 seconds or every 2 minutes, a new participant would enter the match. So it's a 60-minute match. But for the 1995 Royal Rumble, we changed it to one every 60 seconds. So every minute, here comes another. Why was the change made? Whose idea was it? Why did you think you needed to sort of overhaul something you'd been doing?
Was it a minute or 90 seconds? Because I thought we did 90 seconds here.
Okay, maybe you did. Either way, it was 2 minutes. Now it's changed. So
it just speed up the Rumble a little bit. There were times that it would kind of bog down, and we just thought give it a little bit faster pace and try something different. And this was one of those where if you're in control of the thing, you get rid of everybody, less time to rest, and just a different selling point, that it would be a faster paced and a little bit more difficult, trying to sell something different.
Coliseum Video would release the Royal Rumble from 1995 on home video on March 8th, 1995, and it would be released in the UK on May 8th, 1995. I mention this because in this era, video cassette sales were a big revenue stream for the company. What sort of trend are you seeing in VHS here? You've said the business is trending down. Would you also see that cassette sales would be trending down as well? Or is that only when you're looking to sell tickets to pay-per-view?
No, I think that the overall cassettes were on their way out, but we had also, started looking at being able to distribute it ourselves versus using a third-party distributor a la Coliseum Video. And that was when you start looking at all of those things and bringing it in-house and realizing, good God, you're giving away X amount of your business. And by this time, we had taken over the production of Coliseum Video. In the early days, Coliseum Video produced all those ins and outs, and they did all of that themselves. And WWE had very little to do with it other than supplying the footage. So it was a reexamination of the business as a whole, because there was just less money coming in, same amount of tape, same amount of sales, but less profit coming in. So it was a reevaluation of it. And I think, VHS, even by 95, was starting to be on the way out. And you're hearing about this new shit coming up, laser discs and DVDs and all that good crap.
All right, let's get to Meltzer, your boy. He reported at the beginning of January, Jim Ross was rehired to work in the booking department and to produce television. He won't be doing any announcing, however. Apparently Pat Patterson is going to cut down on his workload, and Ross is being brought in to pick up the slack. Pretty much everyone in wrestling was amazed because of the general philosophical differences in regards to what the wrestling product should be between Ross and Patterson. But if you understand wrestling and those individuals, it makes perfect sense. What does that mean?
It means that Dave Meltzer was ill-informed as usual.
Okay.
Jim Ross was brought in to work with the operations end of the business and to work with Ed Cohen in the live events, because at the time we were writing all of the television as well as booking all of the live events and coordinating with Ed Cohen's office, who booked all the buildings and what have you, and also having to deal with the agents on a daily and nightly basis, in addition to doing all of the creative for TV and pay-per-views. JR was brought in to take that load off. So what that meant is Jim was taking the stories that we were doing on television and booking the live events and working with the live events department to make sure that all of that was carried through, and that everything that we had from a creative end was then carried over to the live events. And Jim, being a very detailed individual and very good administratively, to me, was the right guy for that job.
Meltzer would also report the new structure at the top is Vince McMahon remaining as booker. However, Pat Patterson has been moved laterally, and he and Bruce Prichard are in charge of writing the television, and Jim Ross will be McMahon's assistant. There have been tons of rumors regarding why Ross is being brought in, with most of the belief that they want a more serious and less slapstick product. And a lot of people are saying more Japan-like booking with winners and losers and more parity at the top among 10 guys rather than building around 4 Superman faces as they did last year. So you were there. Your response?
My response is what I just told you. And that was that Jim was simply taking what we were doing on television and working with the live events in the individual markets and working from that end, and took that off of our plate, so that in addition to doing all of the television, everything we didn't have to deal with the agents on a day-to-day basis. Jim was not free to book whatever he wanted. Jim was taking the storylines and the matches that we had booked on TV and the stories that we had booked on TV, knowing where we were going to pay-per-views, and reflect that in the live events. And when Meltzer would always use the term booker, there was no booker, and Vince always hated that term. If there was any head booker of anything, has been, and always will be Vince. But he has a lot of help around him, and the end result is everything goes through him and is signed off by him. At this time, it was Jim coming in to help us, and it was a great opportunity for Jim to get his foot back in the door. And it was something that Jim was good at, from that standpoint of detail oriented and making sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed with all of the other departments in the company. Television was a more and more daunting job, and trying to do that and do the live event booking every day, it was too much.
Around this same time on company TV, you guys were pushing Vinny Paz and Roberto Duran on pay-per-view. This is a boxing pay-per-view, of course, but it's all over your TV. There's even lengthy Vinny interviews. Talk about how the involvement came to be. How is Vince McMahon involved in promoting boxing? It feels like it's out of left field, but you know differently.
Well, again, Vince has always toyed with being in the boxing business and looking at different ways to expand. You know, we're a promotion company, and this was another fight, something else to promote, no matter what it was. And it was one of those forays, kind of like Donnie Lalonde and Sugar Ray years before that. And this was another opportunity. Vinny Paz was a good friend of ours, and this was an opportunity to do something else. And they came to us for our expertise in the pay-per-view arena.
Let's keep it moving. Meltzer would report that the company sent out a memo to all employees saying any contact with anyone at WCW would result in immediate dismissal. Do you recall such an initiative? And if so, what would have sparked such?
I don't remember anything in particular. It was more of a, hey, look, if you want to go leave, but don't be basically a double agent and be talking about our business. And that still holds true today. Look, if you want to go work for WCW, go to work for WCW, but don't work here and take a paycheck from this company to feed information to another company. And that was the edict. And I think that, again, when all of that gets out, that people, he said, she said, she said, he said, and by the time that it gets to the quote, people that print this kind of shit, it's, if you talk to anybody, if you say hello to anybody at WCW, you're fired. It was, you know what? We're here. This is our competitor. It's Coke and Pepsi. They don't share secrets back and forth. That was the message.
Who do you think was back channeling info? Terry Taylor wasn't here then, was he? Who would have been riding both sides?
I have no idea. I think that more than anything, there are always going to be people that like to gossip and stir shit up and just want somebody to listen to their gripes. And if you can find a sympathetic ear, no matter where that ear may be, guys look for it. And it's just, telephone, telegraph, telewrestler. And that was the nature of the beast. Always has been, always will be. And I'll go back to the wrestling wars of the 50s and the 60s when territories would break up. 9 times out of 10, when I would listen to the stories of the old timers talking about the different promotional wars in a town or somebody breaking away from a booking office, 9 times out of 10, there was always a referee involved because the referee was the go-between. And in different places, you had heel and babyface locker rooms, and the referee was go-between between those two guys. But the referee usually worked in the office, would carry finishes, would be the one that was in touch with everybody. And it just always shocked me when I would hear the stories. Otto Koos was a referee in Texas when the Dallas booking office and Houston booking office, when they split. And Otto played both sides, and Otto ended up getting burned because once the split happened, neither side wanted him because he had been working both sides. It just, I think as a conglomeration of guys just liking to talk and shit getting out there.
Where did Vince fall on that? Did he feel strongly one way or the other?
He didn't like it. Nobody liked it. I didn't like it. He didn't like it. I don't think anybody liked it. You want to feel secure and you want to feel confident when you're in a working environment that what you say and what you do within that environment is going to remain confidential. If you have to worry about everything that you say and do, no matter what business you're in, then that's not a good environment.
Right.
So, yeah, it's disturbing when you discuss confidential things or you want to make plans for the future that you want it to be released at a certain time under your timeline, not someone else's, and people getting it out there just to get it out, just to gossip, just to get shit out, to have spoilers and shit like that. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Let's keep it moving. Meltzer would write, the Rougeau situation was all over the French language newspapers in Montreal this week, and it's turned into a family feud. First, Jacques went public with how mad he was because Titan sent a cease and desist letter to WCW claiming WCW was tampering with their employee and their territory, Montreal. Titan is claiming Jacques is still under contract to them until his wrestler contract expires in June, and McMahon sent a letter to Eric Bischoff threatening to sue over it. The papers were again very favorable towards Jacques in their coverage, since they traditionally will favor the French Canadians against quote unquote outsiders. Nevertheless, among the public in Montreal, Jacques received an incredible amount of heat. One local source said they'd seen nothing like that locally in a long time, particularly within the media, when the story broke where it talked about Jacques wanting to wrestle again if WCW runs Montreal. So it feels like maybe some of this, hey, don't talk to the other side, could have been instigated by perhaps Jacques trying to have conversations with WCW or with WWF employees on WCW's behalf.
I think it was Jacques thinking that he wasn't going to renew his contract, and he wanted to be prepared when that day came, and already started negotiating with WCW saying, hey, I can get you into Montreal. You need me to run Montreal, and you need me to promote Montreal because I'm the big star here. And in doing so, Jacques was still under contract. So just by him talking to them at that time, it was breaching his contract, and he wasn't allowed to do that. And it was a legal matter more than anything. I do have to laugh when it's like, Vince sent a letter to Eric Bischoff threatening to sue. Vince never addressed anything to Eric, and Eric will tell you that. Vince didn't look at Eric as the guy. He looked at Ted Turner. And if he was going to send anything, he would send it to Ted. He would send it to Turner people. He wouldn't have addressed Eric in a million years.
Why is there such a stark contrast between the Rougeau brothers with the way wrestling sort of regards them? You know, we've talked about this recently where Jacques Rougeau, for whatever reason, has heat everywhere he goes. Meanwhile, Raymond, while all of this is going on, his brother is a commentator for the company, and it feels like Raymond and the WWF are able to sort of have a bit of separation of church and state, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and Raymond is one of those guys that you would have to search long, far, and wide to find anyone that doesn't like Raymond. Just class individual all the way. Really great guy, gets along with everybody. You take his word, you take it to the bank. Jacques was more controversial. Jacques was very outspoken, and Jacques could rub people the wrong way. And what I mean by that is it was personality is all it was. And I don't know that Jacques really meant any harm by it, but they were just different personalities. And my brother and I, people hate me and love my brother. Vice versa too, but it's just different. It's just different personalities. And you couldn't find two more polar opposites than Jacques and Raymond.
Hang on now. I'm calling bullshit on that. Who the fuck likes you and hates Tom?
There's somebody.
Oh. Oh, why was I so slow on that? My apologies. We'll keep it going.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, but if you want to see Dr. Tom, man, you know what? We talked about Tracy Smothers, his benefit coming up. You can see Dr. Tom in Sevierville. And going out is for a good cause, and all the money is going to go to Tracy Smothers Fund, who's battling cancer right now. And Tracy's one of the good guys in the business, a friend of the show. And check him out and help Tracy out here. It's a good cause.
Absolutely. We're going to link that everywhere we can. It's brownpapertickets.com is where you can search for, or just look for KFW Presents, the Tracy Smothers Benefit Show. Man, Tracy's in a bad way, and I didn't know how bad, his lymphoma was or where he was in his fight. I saw a picture of him the other day. I'm not actually going to be able to attend this ticket. I'll be out of town, but I'm buying a lot of tickets just because I know the money goes to Tracy. If you're a big fan of wrestling, you should support this. Look for KFW Presents Tracy Smothers Benefit Show. Tracy is battling stage 3 lymphoma. 100% of the proceeds go to him. If you're able to make it to Sevierville, Tennessee, it's very, very affordable. Tickets start, if you're a kid, at just $7. They go up to $35. Buy the expensive tickets, guys. Let's let all of this money go to somebody in our family who needs our help. It's KFW Presents the Tracy Smothers Benefit Show. brownpapertickets.com is where you can find it.
And that date's Friday, February 7th. So, get on out and show Tracy some love, because Tracy is one of those people back in the day that probably liked me more than Dr. Tom.
I don't know about that. Meltzer would report Vince McMahon attempted to get several of his wrestlers into a Baywatch show with a wrestling theme, but was turned down. All right. Let's just pretend for a minute that Vince really did have this idea. He calls you into his office. He's going to break the news. He's got this big idea. And he says,
"Damn, pal, there's this show on TV. It's called Baywatch. And what we need to do is we got to figure out a way to work with these babies. And they're on watch. I don't know the premise of it, but I'm pretty sure that we could find a way, I don't know, somebody with some maternal instincts to work with the babies."
Is that you?
Yeah, that's what I said. What was that? Actually, they came to us.
Well, again, before we get the real answer, is that how Vince is in real life? Like, he almost he's like one piece of information away. He's real close. Like, my dad, when social media first blew up, he'd say, "Hey son, do you have one of those book faces? Are you on the book face?" And so, he wasn't saying that to be funny. He's legitimately trying to inquire, but he's just, as they said in the movie Life, can't get right. Does Vince have that a little bit with modern pop culture stuff?
In my version, he does.
Sure. But in real life, do you think he has some of that too?
Sometimes, but once once you explain it to him, he's good with it. But, sometimes it'll be, especially with, new modern technology. You think I'm technology challenged. But once he gets it, he's in love with it and really will dig in and learn all about this social medium. What does she do? She tells you the future? No, he's again, yeah. In my version, it is. I always like to mess with him on that.
Let's talk about Baywatch. And the reason this is relevant here is because Pam Anderson is going to be a big piece of Royal Rumble 1995. She's the real star of Baywatch. Her and of course, Mr. Hasselhoff. But later in 95, WCW appears on Baywatch. Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Randy Savage, Vader. But meanwhile, the top star is here with you guys. What happened? Did you guys have an offer to do it and then for whatever reason passed?
Well, WCW did it for free and we wanted to be paid. And they had originally come to us with some wrestling premise, and it was attractive, but it wasn't something that, come on, did you see what they did?
No, I don't remember watching.
It was a little rough, but not to say that it wouldn't have been great exposure. And a lot of that did come through Ray Manzella and Pam Anderson, who was Pam Anderson's, and I got it right that time, Ray Manzella, not Manzarek. I looked it up specifically, and Pam, because he was involved in that.
It's just fascinating to me. It's such a big show, and you guys were passing on the opportunity to be associated with it. I know you don't remember off the top of your head, but hypothetically, what do you think the ask was? I mean, you guys wanted to be paid, but how far apart were you?
They didn't want to pay. Don't you want to be on Baywatch? Yeah, sure we do. But your people were paid. Our people should be paid too. They thought being in a cameo and doing stuff would be enough and for the exposure. And I get that. I really do. They were the most popular show in the world at the time. But at the same time, you've got to position yourself in a certain way. And we didn't feel that that's the way we wanted to be positioned.
Now let's talk about Jean-Paul Levesque. He's going to give notice to WCW on January 10th that he'd be leaving for the WWF. Allegedly, he turned down a contract that was worth between $1,500 and $1,800 per week. And apparently Levesque's decision was based on a track record of the WWF versus WCW when it came to creating new stars. And he felt that even though WCW had plans to make him and Steve Regal the tag champs with Sherry as their manager and feud with Harlem Heat in 95, that he'd take his chances without guaranteed money, since Titan is obviously going to push new blood this year as hard as it can. At company meetings, this is directly from the Observer, Eric Bischoff was fuming over Levesque's lack of loyalty because he took him from nothing, and this is the respect he gets. After the example set with Ricky Steamboat, I can't believe anyone can question a WCW wrestler about making a decision and even considering loyalty to the company. Of course, we're talking about Steamboat being let go when he was injured. We know that Jean-Paul Levesque is going to bet right here. He goes on to be Hunter Hearst Helmsley and then Triple H, and now one of the McMahons, essentially. I mean, the heir to the throne. What do you remember about recruiting Jean-Paul Levesque?
Well, it had actually started a year before that. Walter Kowalski, Killer Kowalski, had told us about this guy that he had trained, Terra Rising. He was his champion for Walter's independent promotion. And Pat and I had gone out to one of Walter's shows and take a look at him and like what we saw, and went to talk to him. And he told us, he goes, man, he'd given his word to WCW. They had offered him a contract, and he said, I'm going to WCW. We asked then said, okay, how long is your contract? He told us it was a year. We said, when your contract's up, please give us a call. We'll be waiting for you and would love to do business with you down the road. So this came up, and at the time we didn't have anything for him, and then we did, and then we didn't. And he was actually ready to sign with WCW, as legend goes, but then Eric didn't get him a contract, and an opening came up on our end where it's like, hey, this guy's available, and said, are you still looking to come? Because we've got an immediate spot where we can use you, plug you into some live events and get you going, but you wouldn't start on TV for another few weeks if you'd be interested. And timing's everything. So our timing was, we had something for him there. WCW still hadn't gotten him a contract. And then when they did, it was just a little too little too late. He wanted the opportunity to come work for WWF, and he had his year in WCW and didn't feel like there was much left there for him. So the rest, as they say, is history.
Who's having that interaction? Does he hear the big pitch from Vince, or does he hear it from you or Pat?
I heard it from JJ. And met with Vince, and we all met with him and came up with the idea, of an aristocrat. We thought, I came up with Greenwich because I was asked, where's, like, name a place where you instantly dislike the people. I said, that's Greenwich. So this aristocrat from Greenwich, Connecticut. And, it was a combination, but he originally, all that was done with JJ over the phone. And then he met with Vince, and then we started rolling on vignettes and getting him in the mix.
Let's keep it moving here. Meltzer would report that Max Payne's gimmick was dropped already, and his name was changed to Man Mountain Rock, doing the guitar gimmick. Talk to me a little bit about Man Mountain Rock.
Well, his gimmick with WWF never was Max Payne. I mean, that may have been something he had done on the Independents and WCW or something, but We brought him in. Daryl was a hell of an amateur wrestler in his day. Big guy, good size, but his love was, heavy metal rock. He wanted to be a rock and roll star. So in talking about this, Vince was like, do you play? Do you do anything? And he said, yeah, I play guitar and I like to sing. I like rock music. And here's this huge mountain of a man. Fuck, it writes itself. He became Man Mountain Rock, and he would come in and play the guitar. And I don't think that he had the singing chops, but it was a rock and roll gimmick with this big bastard. Then looking for him to be able to deliver when the bell rings. And I think that he just was a little heavy when he came in and never really got into the shape that I think if he could have performed a la Bam Bam Bigelow, then I think that he might have been able to do something.
What do you think? Did you know at the time that he was going to go on to teach children to lip sync and create a really cool song for us? I mean, when did you know that this was going to be, Matt Coon in the long run?
Oh,
I mean,
no, he wasn't paranoid and believed stupid shit and completely fucking clueless. No, he had a clue.
Thanks for listening, Matt. We love and appreciate you.
Not really.
Yeah, not really. Let's keep it going here. There's lots of other movers and shakers going on here. And this one I can't wait to talk about. Mike Halleck. He starts as the Minotaur, and his name has now been changed to Mantar.
Where does he get this shit that they started as? He never started as a Minotaur. He was Mantar.
And is managed by Jim Cornette, and what looks to be a rib on Cornette, because this guy is awful. Winning with a splash where he doesn't even get off of his feet. However, he's supposed to be getting a push anyway. They've dropped the buffalo head part of the gimmick, and he's doing a face painted gimmick. Jesus Christ. How much fucking weed were you on when you thought of this shit?
Half man, half beast, Mantar. He had hooves, man. His fucking feet looked like hooves. They were huge. They were thick. And looked like hooves. So, goddamn. Half man, half beast. Mantar. A takeoff on a Minotaur. But, fuck. God, made sense to me.
Top 10 worst ideas ever.
Oh, he's up there. I put him in top 5.
Jesus. You want to address it looks to be a rib on Cornette. I mean, when did you know this really sucked a dick? Right away?
Here, okay, no, actually, it got a giggle when we saw the head. All right. But the moment that you go, oh, fuck, this is awful, is when he tried to get into the ring the first time. Now we think about all that shit. You think about the presentation and every little thing. And at the time, you have a concept and you think about it and it sounds good in your head and, you get everybody there. You tell everybody what you think you want it to be. And then he goes to the ring. He can't get in the fucking ring because the head's goddamn tall. And if he bends over too far, the head's going to come off. And that's one where we sat there and just laughed our ass off going, what the fuck were we thinking? But he had hooves. Hooves, I'm telling you, hooves.
My God.
Huge fucking feet, like thick as shit. Did I mention he had hooves?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what to say. During this time, Bam Bam Bigelow and Diesel start doing Slim Jim commercials. How does this come to be? For years, people said one of the big heat items with the company was when Randy left, he took the Slim Jim sponsorship. But I mean, here it is. We've seen Ultimate Warrior do Slam Jim promos, and now Bam Bam and Diesel are doing them too. So it's obviously not the case that all of the business leaves. What do you remember about Bam Bam and Diesel snapping into it?
Yeah, we tried to salvage that, and I think that they were, first of all, they were in love with Warrior until he started spitting out the product after every take. And then they went to Randy, and Randy, was top notch, and Randy lived the gimmick and wore their shit everywhere. So, but the deal was with WWF. And then when Randy tried to take it, they still had a deal with WWF. And just to be able to try and find someone to fit that role for them. And I think there was the issue became, all right, man, you're promoting on WCW with that guy, and you're promoting on our show with this guy, because they still wanted to buy time and they still wanted to be a part of the program, but they wanted to do it with Savage, who wasn't a part anymore. So it was a little kabuki-ish thing. Didn't last long.
Let's keep it moving here. I want to talk about Lex Luger. Wade Keller would report, with Lex Luger's 2-year contract with the WWF expiring this month, his promotional affiliation is not a foregone conclusion. Several indicators suggest the WWF may be resigned or willing to lose him, including the fact that Diesel has supplanted him as the top babyface. There have been unconfirmed reports that Luger has inquired about a meeting this week with WCW in Atlanta. If the WWF expects to lose Luger, that could explain Michaels' rather harsh comments about Luger in recent weeks, saying things like he punches like a girl. Now, in fairness, Luger does have weak-looking punches. It's not something you point out if there are long-term plans for him. Michaels also said that Luger would be helpless without a clothesline as an offensive weapon, and Luger, reportedly, was extremely upset with both of those comments. Luger is a longtime WCW wrestler before ever joining the WWF, owns a gym in Atlanta with a top WCW talent in Sting, and of course has family roots there now. After the WWF attempts to market him as the next Hulk Hogan, including an elaborate bus tour across the country, failed, Luger has been relegated to the mid-level status in the company. If Luger re-signs with the WWF, they would probably feel safe in pushing him again, perhaps in main event matches against Bret or Diesel later this year. But if he doesn't stay, the WWF has buried Luger enough lately where it wouldn't even be perceived as a major blow. Because of his personal and business roots in WCW, that he would get a guaranteed deal with WCW well above his current WWF pay, a jump appears to be a distinct possibility. In WCW, that would set up another situation where Hogan down the line could team with Luger, turn on him, and then feud with him. So lots of sort of fantasy booking here, but in the end, we know they get it right. Lex doesn't wind up leaving until September of 95. He shows up on the first episode of Nitro. Were there concerns back here at the beginning of the year that, hey, he might be out of here? Or had you guys already pretty much decided we don't really want to re-sign?
No, Vince wanted to re-sign him. Vince really wanted Lex to stay, and Vince had a soft spot for Lex and liked Lex. But as I've said many times, my issue with Lex always was, if you say you want to stay, then sign the contract. Then show it. There weren't any big guarantees at that time or anything like that, so that wasn't an issue. If you want to stay. Show us. And he never would. So that it bred distrust, at least to me and to Pat. But Vince is very big on taking guys at their word, and he wants to believe. He wants to believe what they're saying is the gospel, that they're going to be here, and that we should do the same thing. And being the pessimist that I am at times, I just didn't believe it, and I wanted to see it. And we didn't see it, so I went about business being very careful in how we did things, because you want to play with your players. If he's not going to be a player, then don't put him in the game.
Let's talk about the actual Royal Rumble here. Meltzer would write about the show and say, Todd Pettengill, easy for me to say, did an excellent job on the pregame show and making it feel like a major event. Pettengill is really great in this role. He is a hypester for the major show's role, but they've just got to keep him away from calling matches. The only negative was that the live crowd, while looking large enough on screen, came off so far less enthusiastic than Pettengill that he seemed like he was doing a sell job rather than coming off as natural. Todd Pettengill's a guy we haven't spent a ton of time talking about on the show. Recently, his traditional radio career came to an end. He's doing his own thing, sort of taking control of his own career now, creating his own content. But he's sort of one of the unsung heroes of WWE for many, many years.
I always thought that Todd Pettengill was one of the best salesmen that we ever had. He was such a natural. He was a great conversationalist, a great interview because he thought like the fan. And yes, he was a great salesman, sometimes over the top, but he was always entertaining and always came with ideas and was just so damn easy to work with. Between Todd Pettengill and like Michael Cole, those guys came from a professional broadcasting, doing the news and doing radio and things like that. They just were naturals in their jobs, and they kind of fell into it quicker than someone that hadn't done that before. And to me, Pettengill was excellent at what he did.
Well, he's a salesperson, and let's see if I can sell you some shit. If you like retro video games like Nintendo, Super Nintendo, or Sega Genesis, wrestling from the late 80s or early 90s, then check out The Dirty Game Room on YouTube. The channel is run by Mark Allen, a dude in his mid-30s whose main goal in life is creating entertaining videos that you can watch on your phone while you take a shit. He works 60 hours a week at Chili's, cooking, and obviously he hates every minute of that shit. The only thing that gets him through his shift is listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff and Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard every single fucking day, hoping that one day Prichard will finally reveal how big Batista's dick really is. He gets home, pounds beers, and makes videos for us to watch so we can escape reality for a few minutes and all go back to a time when we were young. Back when bills didn't matter. Back when we had no actual problems. The only thing upsetting at the time was that Sergeant Slaughter had just beat Warrior for the title at the 91 Rumble. The channel has reviews and fun facts about not only video games, but also wrestling and TV and movies, all from the same era. Movies like Terminator 2 or Beetlejuice or Jurassic Park or The Crow or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And TV shows like Airwolf and the Power Rangers. The Dirty Game Room also covers classic games like Contra, Wrestlemania, No Mercy for the N64, Battletoads, Double Dragon, and a bunch of other shit. Click on the YouTube app on your phone and search The Dirty Game Room. Make sure you click the subscribe button, leave a comment on one of his videos, suggest future reviews, and he'll write back to you right away. The Dirty Game Room, all retro, all the time. Bruce, you're going to check this out the next time you take a shit.
Already have.
All right.
You love it. It's a way to pass the time. And before you know it, you're done with your business and you've been entertained. And you're ready to go on with your next piece of business.
Well, since we're talking about all things Vince on this show usually, what's the phrase Vince uses when he has to take a shit? Does he say things like, I have to go use the men's room. I have to go pinch a loaf. I've got to drop the Browns off at the Super Bowl. I've got to drop the kids off at the pool. I got to go take a Bruce and wipe my Prichard. What's he say usually?
That he's going to do a Connie.
Yeah, he refers to me as,
I got to go make a Connie.
You know, that fat guy you do a podcast with, you know the one with the beard or whatever.
Yeah. That one.
Well,
you know.
Meltzer would be critical of.
What are we doing with our life?
We're trying to make people laugh, entertain them, talk about all wrestling stories. Meltzer would say somebody needs to clue the celebrities they use in on the storyline of what's going to happen. Pam Anderson, who they hyped more than any of the wrestlers, both in selling the show and during the show, visibly appeared to have no clue as to what was going on and nearly ruined the end of the show. She started laughing at Shawn Michaels doing his act. She was exactly as bad as the centerfold girl at ringside during the Flair Sting 88 Clash match, which aired on TBS 2 nights earlier. In fact, they may as well have been the same person. Lawrence Taylor should have done anything but laugh during his angle with Bam Bam Bigelow. Critical.
And this coming from the genius who has actually put on so many shows and drawn so much money and created so many angles and produced and directed so much talent during his time. He's an expert. Let me say this about that. Pam Anderson, first of all, if you follow the story all the way to WrestleMania, her reaction to Shawn Michaels, who was a heel motherfucker, was exactly what it was supposed to be, so that it was a reluctant Pam Anderson throughout the promotion going to WrestleMania, because it was kind of like, oh, fuck, I didn't want to be with Shawn. Lawrence Taylor, who is sitting there, and everybody was laughing at Bam Bam Bigelow for losing the match. That was the story, you fucking moron. And if you pay attention to story, not your 97-star matches in Yokohama, then you would understand that. Lawrence was being a part of the story. He was laughing at Bam Bam, and then being a professional, got up to say, hey, man, good match. Hey, let's shake. To start the story. Reacting to it's just the stupidity of the comments is baffling to me.
I love when you get fired up.
No, it's fucking baffling. I actually in my head said I'm not gonna go there this week because of just. Yeah, up my ass sideways. It fucking irritates me so much.
Well, if you'd have got on this Jericho cruise this week, you could have been hanging out with Dave Meltzer.
Yeah, I'm sure he was hanging out all right.
What does that mean?
I'm sure he was hanging out.
Let's get back to the 95 Royal Rumble. Meltzer would say, their announcing was below par. Vince McMahon is usually very good, but seemed distracted at times during the show, even to the point of not knowing which member of Well Done was which, and even trying to suddenly bring up history after more than a decade of erasing it. Jerry Lawler was too predictable with his comments about the same old tired gimmick Bobby Heenan has been doing for years and still does, of predictably changing predictions. So he's critical of the announcing. I got to tell you, when I watched this back, I didn't think they did a bad job. It was sort of par for course for them.
Yeah, it was very entertaining. And it's, as I've told you, I've been able to watch the shows coming up, and I know we're doing shows now, and I loop them in my office so that it's almost ingrained in my head. But the announcing was good. It was fine. It was what it was.
We should mention next week, buckle up. It's the Radicals Revisited. It's the show that essentially put us on the map way back in 2016. We're going to redo it, do a remix with the benefit of research. Back in the day, it was just a couple of guys sitting down, clicking record. Now we've actually got real formatting and forethought, and insight that we could reference, actual dates and specifics. So we'll do all of that next week. And then on February 7th, stay tuned for Sherry Martell. She is long overdue. Let's talk about what Meltzer thought of this show, though. And I think you'll be happy to hear. I felt this was an excellent show overall, particularly from a booking standpoint, given the obvious weaknesses in the company right now when it comes to talent depth. It was remarked to me after the WWF right now has absolutely two superior performers. It's Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. That pretty much everyone recognizes as real superstars that the company can build around. Razor Ramon, Diesel, Lex Luger, and Owen Hart are over to the degree of being secondary stars, and in the right scenario could work with the other two and have great matches that people still care about. Undertaker, while having lost a tremendous amount of steam, is still a gimmick that separates him from the pack. And 1-2-3 Kid is also a unique performer, and Davey Boy Smith has the name for Europe. The rest of the WWF comes off like a bunch of guys named Joe that nobody cares about, even though some of them are pushed very hard. Two guys named Joe are Jeff Jarrett, who epitomizes not being over no matter how hard they push him, and Bob Holly, who came out of this show as champions, named Joe, that renders these titles as worthless at the gate as all the secondary titles in WCW. So I think he's probably on the money about Shawn and Bret, and then the list of secondary stars and Undertaker and Davey Boy. What do you make of him saying no matter what they do, Jeff Jarrett's never going to be over?
You want to know what's worthless?
What's
his opinion.
Okay. What's your opinion?
My opinion is that Jeff at the time, character heel, and was what it was. But, you know, Bob Holly was somebody, again, it's like, oh, this talent's stale. So we want new. You bring in new. Oh, this new's no good. We want old. The tune never changes. And it's fucking hell. I am beginning to wonder about the quality of this show now, because I really liked it top to bottom. And now the fact that he says it was a good show, now I'm second guessing it.
I got you. Let's talk about your boy.
My boy.
Your boy.
Kane?
Buck Quartermain.
The fuck is that?
He's in the dark match here. He gets a win over the Brooklyn Brawler. He's 52 years old now. He was with the company in 1995 a little bit. And then he had some at this show, of course. And then I guess
he worked for us?
Yeah. I mean, you know, he had some like tryouts or whatever. He did some stuff with Dory Funk Jr. and that got him a couple of shots on like Jacked and Sunday Night Heat. He did,
I thought that was the name you were making up.
No, like a handicap match with Big Show. And anyway, what's your favorite Buck Quartermain match?
Yep. That one.
Yeah. Anyway, he gets a win over the Brooklyn Brawler. Cause goddamn, who didn't?
I'm sure he's a very nice man.
Oh, I'm sure Meltzer would say also too. I think you'll like this. Even though the show was, in my opinion, from top to bottom, the best WWF pay-per-view show in years, the crowd reactions.
It was definitely the best one so far this year.
He really liked it. He said WrestleMania had two matches that were far better than anything here. Of course, he's talking about Razor and Shawn and Bret and Owen. But he also says that this show only had one bad match. But he really thinks that the crowd reactions hurt the show. He says Jarrett in particular, and even Bret and Diesel for some of their match, they're doing very good work, and it just seems like the crowd didn't care. And those live said they only sustained heat on the shows during the final few minutes of the tag title match. There's also some strange pops. A big pop for the entrances of Luger, Backlund, and Doink, but they all ended fairly quickly. And then Shawn got a tremendous face reaction. You watch this back, you love the show. Did you notice that the fan reactions maybe weren't what they could have been?
Yeah, but I think a lot of it had to do with no music and just you didn't know who the hell it was until they were there. And Shawn, as far as his reaction at the end, man, Shawn was a babyface. Everything he did, he was so damn good that, you know, it was hard to boo him. So, yeah, some of them were. I mean, you mentioned Backlund. Watching this show and seeing just the reaction Bob got when he came out, I just was like, there you go. I mean, that said it all, because Bob was over and he got a reaction out of people, and it was very entertaining.
Yeah, it caught me off guard. I'll just be honest. I mean, I don't know what I expected, but when I heard the reaction from him and it was so positive, I thought it was Clint from Hershey. I mean, I've never been a huge Backlund guy, but Clint from Hershey, it's one of his favorite wrestlers. Him and
Well, you know that Bob Backlund is from Glastonbury, Connecticut. That is just due east of Hershey, Pennsylvania, whereas the chocolate capital of the world. My favorite is the Reese's Pieces. So I wish that they made them in different colors other than just orange and yellow. But, you know, that's where Bob Backlund's from, and he's my favorite wrestler.
let's keep it going. Let's talk about the opening match here. Jeff Jarrett is going to win the Intercontinental title from Razor Ramon in 18 minutes and 6 seconds, 3.25 stars. What'd you think of this one? You know, it's an interesting deal where the first part of the match finishes when Ramon takes a bump over the top rope, starts selling the left knee. On the outside, the roadie clips Ramon's knee. He's counted out. And then Jarrett says he didn't want to win by count out because he wants the title. So I guess they've been doing this on the house shows since like November. So they restart the match, keep it going, and eventually it goes Jarrett's way and they switch the title. What'd you think?
I thought it was a damn good match. And I always, I always talk about Razor. You always forget how big Scott Hall is and was.
Massive.
He's a big damn man.
6'7". I mean, he's as tall or taller than Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, he just was so smooth and so good watching this match. And this was something that we had done originally back with Shawn Michaels and Mr. Perfect when they had a little program where we would do these false finishes, restart the match, stop the match, restart the match, and go on. But we had never done it on pay-per-view and thought that these two guys could pull it off and be an entertaining story. So that was the thought process behind it. It was something that we had done with Shawn and Perfect, and then it had been long enough that we did it with Razor and Jeff, and I thought it just added to the match. You think it's over, and you got more, and it was very entertaining. And I loved watching Brian James just do the roadie gimmick. It was in its infancy, so it was, you know, the true gist of the roadie gimmick with him getting down low and the idea he brings a microphone and he's always trying to stay off camera, out of the way, like roadies do in a rock concert. And it was entertaining to me. Brian James in a lot of ways stole a lot of scenes in this.
He really did. You can see the charisma, and it's no wonder that he went on to be a big star, you know, when given the opportunity. Was that on Vince's radar? I feel like he would get tickled with a performer like this.
Well, no, it wasn't until we started doing it. And then the little nuance things that Brian would do that you would chuckle at and just say, that's so fucking good. And he paid attention to the little nuanced details. It began as, hey, here's something for Brian James. And he'd been around. We'd had some tryout matches, and it was Shawn Michaels' idea. And Shawn, you know, was doing the bit for us and go, he's a roadie, and he gets down low, and he brings Jeff the microphone, hands off to him, and then gets out of the way and hangs out in the corner, and he's sneaky, and he's trying to stay off camera and trying to stay out of the way, but he's in the way all the time. And Brian just used that little that description and made the most out of it and went on to bigger and better things.
How critical do you think?
And you know what? And he was a good singer too. Now, not as good as me, because what I do is I like to spend my days working hard on the go, but the hands on the clock keep spinning too slow. I can't wait to be alone with my baby tonight.
Well,
that's all you get tonight.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I was trying to cut you off.
No, you're not. You know my baby's got me wrapped around her little finger. And you know that I would walk through hell and back to be with her. 'Cause I can't wait to be alone with my baby tonight. Let's go to Luckenbach, Texas. Willie and Waylon and the boys. Okay.
Do you get a Woodrow singing that song?
Which one? Luckenbach, Texas, or With My Baby Tonight?
With My Baby Tonight.
A little bit. always let them know, hey, I can get your first order for free.
Use our promo code WRESTLE. Gonna get that cock meat super hard for you. Next up, we've got The Undertaker working with IRS. Yeah, that's a real thing. There's going to be druids involved here. They're going to shake the ropes when Undertaker's going for a rope walk. He's going to fall in and immediately sit up. This is interesting, I suppose. Eventually, IRS steals the urn from Paul Bearer. Kong Bundy comes out, does a lame run in with an elbow drop, a knee drop, and a splash on Undertaker. Bundy leaves him laying. And without the magic urn, Undertaker's selling the beating, and he's shaken up badly. So, star and a quarter, but Undertaker gets the win in 12 minutes, 21 seconds. Why are these two put together? Feels sort of out of left field.
Well, there's only two things you can count on in this world. That's death and taxes. So,
fuck you.
What?
Just, we made that correlation a long time ago, that if they were a tag team, that's what it would be called. But I can't believe you just decided to dust that off today.
That's because that's what it was. That was two things you can count on. And so obviously they were at odds. And I don't think Undertaker has forgiven me to this day to go to the Bundy story at WrestleMania.
It does feel like you guys made him draw the short straw many years in a row.
Because he could handle it.
Yeah, you know what? That's
the confidence in him.
That's the shitty deal, with like, being, I don't know, talk about it another time. As we know, 20 years later, Undertaker would defeat IRS's son, Bray Wyatt, at WrestleMania. Tells you how long this dude's been around carrying the heavy water for generations. Next up, man, one of the better matches of Bret Hart and certainly Diesel's career. 4.25 stars. This is their second pay-per-view match. King of the Ring 94. They also wrestled for the world title with Diesel winning by DQ, and Jim Neidhart, who was in Bret's corner, would interfere and hit Diesel. Bret would end up defeating Diesel for that title later in the year. Survivor Series. I think that's probably the best of the three, but this is a really good one, and they give him plenty of time. 27 minutes and 19 seconds. Hart's going to come out playing an aggressive, subtle heel, wrapping Diesel's leg around the ring post and using a figure four at the start of this thing. Shawn Michaels is going to be involved. Either way, Diesel retains, goes to a no decision. I like the storytelling. They got plenty of time. At the end, we get to showcase a lot of other talent. Shawn Michaels, Owen Hart, Bob Backlund, Jeff Jarrett, the Roadie. Everybody's doing a run in. It's chaos. I wish we had a clean finish on the pay-per-view, but the match on the way there, pretty good stuff.
Yeah, you didn't need a finish on this, and it was so damn good, including the promos backstage leading up to it from earlier in the day with Pettengill trying to get a word from Diesel, who was nonchalant earlier in the day and laughing and joking, and now he was all into the match and didn't feel like talking to Todd. And then you go to Bret, who was just Bret, and it was sold the match. He's like, hey, you know what? I mean, I like Diesel. He's an all right guy, but I'm going to beat him. I mean, I don't care one way or another. I'm going to beat him for the championship because that's what it's all about. It made this match important, and it made it real, and you felt both sides of it. And Bret didn't go full on heel. Bret went in there as kind of the underdog to the giant Diesel. They told a tremendous story, and we told a lot of stories around it based on where we wanted to go at WrestleMania with Shawn and Diesel. I just I sat there and watched it twice. I mean, in its entirety, both times. And when it came on, thinking, holy shit, I think that the matches, Bret brought out the best in Diesel. And all their matches, this one in particular, were some of the best shit that Diesel ever did, in my opinion.
I don't know how you can argue that. Really, really great performance by Bret. He gives Diesel one of the best matches he ever had. Next up, we've got a 3 3/4 match. It's a tag team tournament finale. Crown some new champions. In round one, as a recap, we saw Bigelow and Tatanka beat Men on a Mission. The Head Shrinkers would get a win over Owen and Neidhart. The Heavenly Bodies would beat the Bushwhackers. 1, 2, 3 Kid and Bob Holly would beat Well Done. And the semifinals is Bigelow and Tatanka over the Head Shrinkers and Bob Holly, and 1, 2, 3 Kid over the Heavenly Bodies. Now here we are. It's the finale. It's 1, 2, 3 Kid and Bob Holly winning the tag titles over Bam Bam and Tatanka. They get plenty of time. 15 minutes and 32 seconds. They're really pushing, just based on size alone, that the 1, 2, 3 Kid and Bob Holly are the underdogs. And they've done it so hard on commentary that Meltzer would say they effectively leave little doubt that they're going to be anything other than the winners. And the announcers are selling the idea that Bigelow is going to be laughed at by everyone because he was pinned by the 1, 2, 3 Kid. And Bigelow was running around ringside and Lawrence Taylor is laughing at him. And then Bigelow gave Taylor a great shove. And this builds their WrestleMania confrontation. 3 3/4 stars. What'd you think of the match? And what'd you think of the decision to put the straps on the 1, 2, 3 Kid and Bob Holly? They're going to lose them the very next night on a live Raw to the Smoking Guns. So is this simply done as a way to establish Bigelow and Lawrence Taylor?
Exactly. The whole match, everything about it was to get to Bam Bam and LT. The going back and watching this match, God, I marveled at just the agility and athleticism of Bam Bam Bigelow. You forget he was a big bastard and he could move like a lightweight, sold everything. It was just a really, really good match. Maybe a little bit too long. Yeah, could have gone a few minutes shorter, but it was a means to an end. And at the end, the stuff with LT I thought was played to perfection, especially on LT's part, laughing at Bigelow and then being real, like, hey man, come on, we're professionals and put her here, dude. I'm just fucking with you. I appreciate your shit. And the shove, Bam Bam shoved the living shit out of him, and he went through Dino and everybody in all the way back to the third row. It was great shit. I mean, and LT, especially in that market, we're in Hartford, and where we in? Yeah, we're in Hartford. No, we weren't. We're in fucking Tampa. Why am I thinking we're in Hartford for the pay-per-view?
For WrestleMania.
We're in Tampa. Yeah. But LT had just retired and he was still a big name in football, and everybody knew who the fuck LT was. And it was going to be a big deal in that New York market when we replayed that everywhere. But, we had gotten down, we stayed at Saddlebrook in the Tampa area. And I remember that was so that we could be close to LT. We could spend some time with him because all LT wanted to do, he didn't give a shit how many hours he had to work out. He didn't give a shit what you wanted him to do. He just wanted to be able to play 18 holes of golf every day. So we got him to Saddlebrook. We stayed at the resort, and he got his 18 holes of golf in, and then he was happy. And he would do whatever you wanted him to do. Just had to get that golf in first.
How did you guys choose Bigelow for his opponent?
Somebody that was big and impressive that you could put in the press and be able to hold his own with the New York press, and a formidable opponent, someone that would look big and nasty, look the part, that you feel in a fight with LT would probably kick LT's ass. LT had a reputation for being a badass, and so did Bigelow. He looked the part, a different look with the bald head and the flames and everything. So the New York media is going to eat that shit up. And it worked, and also felt that Bam Bam was a good enough worker that he could carry LT to a good match. And those guys, again, I think of the talent and the outsiders that have come into our world and been able to adapt. LT was one that first time you see somebody in a ring, if they're comfortable, and LT rolled into the ring and laid on the mat and got up and just kind of played, and it was like, holy shit, He's home. He felt at home in the ring the very first time he ever got in. And that's when you know, okay, he's going to be okay.
How does the deal come together? Who contacts who?
We contacted them. We had some connections at the time. Actually, Lisa Wolf, who had worked with the NFL, and we used those connections. Reached out to LT, and it was all timing, and it was looking for something because Hartford was so close to New York that you wanted to make it a local event in a lot of respects and have him at home where we knew he would be cheered. And you get the press. God, man, we did the workout in Times Square, literally set a ring up in Times Square and shut down Times Square at noon, in the middle of the day, and had a public workout with LT and drew an unbelievable crowd. Those kind of stunts that, because LT was local, lived there, again, all he wanted to do was play golf. Man, get me my 18 holes and I'll do whatever you want. Get me on a course I can't get on, which he could get on any course he wanted, but he was happy to do whatever you needed him to do. And we started out this promotion having him for X amount of dates, like a few dates. It was, you had this, you had Tampa, you had a press conference, and then a few more dates leading up to WrestleMania. And as we got into this after Tampa, it was like, shit, he loved it so much. We fell in love with him. It was like, hey man, well, you're all in, you're with us for the next 3 months. And he was like, cool. Want to play golf.
Who all helped train him wrestle?
That was Bam Bam and Pat.
And by the time we see him here at Royal Rumble, had he already started training, or was that after this?
I don't remember. I think he had been in the ring before this, but not a lot. The majority of it came on the way in the window from Rumble to Mania, but he was there a lot. I mean, he showed up and worked his ass off.
Was anybody else considered besides Bam Bam? Or, I mean, it was, once you guys came to that, obviously that's the one you went with, but do you remember anybody else even being kicked around? It's weird to sort of fantasy book that one, because I can't imagine it with anybody else.
We talked about teaming him with Diesel and that kind of a scenario, but Lawrence Taylor was such a natural athlete, and he was such a big star in that market that there was confidence on Bam Bam's part. There was confidence on our part that Bam Bam could carry him to a match. So once we all had that confidence, it was the intrigue of seeing what LT could do in a ring by himself.
Let's get going here on the Royal Rumble. Number 1, Shawn Michaels. Of course, he's going to win this one. He's going to last longer than anybody, and he's going to have the most eliminations, 8 here. The British Bulldog is out next, and he's going to be there at the very end too. So he's going to last almost as long as Shawn Michaels, just 1 second less, of course. Next up, we've got Eli Blue, who we've talked about a little bit under different names. You remember the Harris brothers. And then Duke the Dumpster Drose. Haven't spent a lot of time talking about him. He comes in at number 4. What do you remember about old Duke?
Nice guy. And that was about it. Mike Drosy was probably too nice for this business. And he was the kind of guy that would believe everything anybody would tell him. And it just, he super nice guy, but I don't think he was meant for the business.
I think he's in Tennessee these days. Let's keep it moving. Let's talk about next up, another guy we don't talk about a lot. Number 5, Jimmy Delray. And this is well, he had an interesting run in the company, to say the least. We lost him, 6 or 7 years ago. I think he suffered a heart attack while he was driving and unfortunately passed away. But he had an interesting end to his run here with the company. I think a lot of fans remember him as being a big part of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but he was involved with the World Wrestling Federation as well. What do you remember?
Yeah, he was one half of the Heavenly Bodies with Tom. And he was Jimmy Backlund. He had worked in Florida, but I didn't know much about him before he came in. He was kind of one of those unknown guys that got into a spot and had his 15 minutes of fame, but, not a lot after he left, and was just kind of one of those journeymen that came through and had a little bit of a run and moved on.
If you haven't, you need to go out of your way to see Kevin Nash tell the story of Jimmy Delray's final incident with the company. Do you remember hearing about that? The quote unquote helter skelter, where allegedly he laid with a lady who may or may not have been on her period. And
oh God, I don't need to hear that shit. Yeah, what the fuck?
I think he allegedly he put some housey on.
Oh God,
shaved her head.
No. What the fuck?
Coming up next, we've got who we know as the Barbarian, but you guys had decided to call him something different here at number 6. Why are you changing the Barbarian's name? By the way, it's his real first name, but why?
He was Sione. I really don't know. I heard that. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Fucking Barb. I dumbfounded for an answer there.
Next up, Dr. Tom Prichard, who we know is almost universally loved. Number 8, Doink the Clown. Number 7, we've thought about this for a long time.
Quang.
I think it's Kwong.
No, it's not Kwong.
You're going
Only
Quang.
hillbillies in Alabama call him Kwong.
Well, I mean, some people call him TNT. I know him as Savio Vega. He's in at number 9. Then Rick Martel, which seems like from another era. Then Owen Hart in at number 11. At number 12, Timothy Well. I don't know when we're going to talk about him again. We lost him, just a couple of years ago. Went away way too early, passing away at the very young age of 55. We knew him as Rex King. We knew him as Timothy Well. He's part of Well Done. My goodness. What do you remember about this?
Oh boy, Rex was up there on the paranoid meter. I think that if he would have gotten out of his own way, that I don't know, he did all right. It just was, there's some guys that are meant to fill out the card, and Rex was one of those guys who was meant to fill out the card. It wasn't a lot of personality there, or not a special look or anything else, but he could definitely go when the bell rang.
Next up at number 13, we've got Bushwhacker Luke. He's only going to be in here 12 seconds. He's in and out. I guess it's worth mentioning. Owen Hart was out in 3 seconds. Timothy Well, he's out in 23 seconds. Bushwhacker Luke, he's out in 12 seconds. And then Jacob Blue, he's out in 17 seconds at number 14. King Kong Bundy comes in at number 15. Mo is in at number 16. What's your favorite Mo match?
I'd definitely say this one.
Yeah. Mo did a great job here.
Yeah, I could have done a little less time, but
yeah, 3 seconds is what it did here.
Yeah.
Number 17, it's Mabel. Number 18, Bushwhacker Butch. Number 19, it's Lex Luger. Number 20, your favorite and mine, Mantar. You believe
he had hooves?
I just want to remind everybody that Mantar right now, as we speak, is just 2 years younger than Chris Jericho.
Yeah, he was a youngster.
I'm just saying.
Hell of an amateur too.
Mantar could be your champion real soon. 21, Aldo Montoya. 22, and giant of a man, Henry O. Godwin. 23, another giant of a man, Billy Gunn. 24, Bart Gunn. 25, Bob Backlund to a big pop. 26, Stephen Dunn. 27, Dick Murdoch. What in the world? I can't believe Dick Murdoch was in this. Of course, we know Dick would only live another 18 months or so. He passed away in June of 96, but I don't remember him ever being here. And here he was. How does this come to be?
Well, the entrance for the Royal Rumble, it went out worldwide, and Dick got his entry fee in early to be a participant in the Royal Rumble. So he was one of the lucky ones that made it through the application process. And threw a fucking drop kick in the match.
Serious business. Who pushed for Murdoch to be on
We would always look for that outside guy, one or two that you're like, what the fuck? And Dick was our what the fuck this year. I think that Dick had called, or somebody had a conversation with him at some point, and they're going, what about Dick Murdoch? Great. See if he's available.
It is like crazy to think that he was involved in this.
And one of the last ones in the ring.
Yeah. I mean, you would think it would have been somewhere else, but it wasn't. It's just, I don't know. Interesting to me. And the year before,
he and Butch Reed were over in Florida.
No argument for me. The year before, you guys did something similar when you had Tenryu and the great Kabuki in there, which really
He's just an Arab boy, Kabuki.
But you got the next year, you've got like Squat Teamer number 1 and Squat Teamer number 2. Of course, the Headhunters. And then Dory Funk was in that one, and yeah, you guys were doing some weird stuff during the Rumbles back here. 28, Adam Bomb. 29, Fatu, who we know is going to go on to be Rikishi. And number 30, Crush. So we got both Brian Clark and Brian Adams here. Not the most star-studded affair, but they did a good job with it. Of course, the finish comes down to an interesting moment here. We've got Crush sort of pressing Shawn Michaels over his head, sort of Ric Flair Sting style, but he does a couple of reps with him. But Shawn lands in the ring, and then Davey Boy clotheslines Crush over the top. Michaels is putting on a show, taking some bumps for Davey Boy. Eventually, Davey Boy clotheslines Shawn Michaels over. It looks like he's eliminated, but Shawn's holding on to the top rope with one hand, the middle rope with the other. Only one foot touches the floor. They've got the camera set up perfectly on either side, and 2 referees notice and indicate that only 1 foot has hit the floor. Eventually, Bulldog thinks he's won the thing. They cue his music. His music starts playing. He goes to the middle rope, camera side, to celebrate. We've got a tight shot on him, and then out of nowhere, Shawn hits him with the old axe handle in the back. Davey Boy tumbles out. Then the bell rings, and the referees are trying to raise Shawn's hand and let everybody know that the winner, because only 1 foot touched, is Shawn Michaels. And they're careful on the original showing to not air a clean shot of Shawn landing in case it wasn't perfect, but he did it perfectly. Only had 1 foot there. 3.5 stars. What'd you think of the match? What'd you think of the finish?
Actually, I'd been reading on Twitter and a lot of the tweets, and it felt like people thought this was like the worst Rumble match ever. I thought it was damn good. It told a great story of Shawn and Davey Boy all the way through. We integrated the stories with Bret and Owen and Backlund and all that other shit within the match. And all the way through, you have the consistent story of, is Shawn Michaels going to last till the end? Is Davey Boy Smith going to last to the end? And the first 2 guys that start the damn thing ended the damn thing. And it was just masterfully done, in my opinion. And yes, I'm prejudiced. Put it together with Patrick. So yeah, I'm definitely prejudiced, and I have a little bit of pride of authorship there. But it was just done to perfection. And Shawn, it was Shawn's idea for the 1 foot. He was like, "Hey, both feet have to hit. What happens if only one hits? So we'll both have to hit." And he had this crazy idea: man, if you touch, we're fucked. And we figured out how to shoot it and make sure that we weren't going to get caught live. But he was like, "I ain't gonna touch. Trust me, I'm gonna come close, but I ain't gonna touch." And he never did. And just that story, Davey thought he won, man. It's all the celebration, and that fucker's still hanging on. And shit, it just felt really good. And going back all these years later and watching it, knowing very few people knew. We even started Bulldog's music when Bulldog, went over, and the one referee inside, raised Bulldog's hand. We hit his music like it was a mistake. And oh my God, Bulldog won. Everybody thought, wait a minute. The referee's outside. Only one's touched. Great story.
It was a great story. Very well done. We should mention Shawn Michaels had been out of action for a little while leading up to this Rumble because he had 2 pins put in his hand. And this Rumble match marks his return to TV. But he was working some house shows here and there on the way here. This is the 2nd year in a row with a creative finish for the Rumble. You may remember in 94, it looked like Lex Luger and Bret touched at the same time. And that's why we got the interesting set of matches at WrestleMania that we did. And the previous year, was there any concern that after doing that finish in 94, that maybe we were going back to the well too soon here? Or did this feel different enough that everybody was satisfied?
I thought it was completely different. Yeah, because we did the double finish, and we had to have the match with Bret and Luger, and here it was just he wasn't eliminated, and it's been something that we've been able to use and utilize for years since, and different creative ways to tell that same story, and each year, and it's a challenge to make it different.
With this win, Shawn Michaels becomes the first man in Royal Rumble history to win the match, coming in at the number 1 position. As we said, he had 8 eliminations in the match, which at the time ties Hulk Hogan from 89 with the most eliminations in one match. Also with the win, as we know, Shawn is going to lock up a world title shot at WrestleMania 11, which would wind up being with his former friend / bodyguard Diesel. So after the ring is cleared and Shawn is the winner, he brings in Pam Anderson with him, who's sitting ringside, and starts doing his little dance. And she acts like she'd rather be anywhere but there, as we've talked about. It's very clear here that Shawn's one of the top performers in the company. Was anything else even considered, or did you know at this point he's getting the world title shot at 11? I mean, you knew what your quote unquote main event was with Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam Bigelow, but that's the attraction. Was it a no-brainer that he's getting the title shot?
Yeah, we had planned it for a while. It was a split up of Shawn and Diesel, and now Shawn's making his play for the championship, and that was always the plan getting there.
In hindsight, does it feel like when you watch this back and the pay-per-view starts, instead of because this show could not start any differently than the one we reviewed last week with 1990, where Vince is doing a voiceover and putting over 30 different talents and really stressing that it's every man for himself. And we don't see that here. Instead, we see all the guys lined up to jack off to Pamela Anderson's limousine arriving. In hindsight, did that take away? It doesn't feel like it ages the right way. Like there's not enough focus on what we're here to talk about. It's all on this, at the time, larger than life pop culture celebrity. Well,
and she was probably the most recognizable celebrity in the world at that time. So you might as well utilize that while you have it. And that was the idea behind it. So I think we told the story all the way through the meaning of the Royal Rumble and winning it, getting that title opportunity. And, you know, Pam being a part of that, knowing that we had Pam again for WrestleMania, her going away and marrying Tommy Lee and coming back a different person was a whole nother story. But at the time, it was pretty cool to have Pam Anderson and know that we had her later on for WrestleMania, because she was just so great to work with throughout the entire promotion.
Did you ever have to do any shoots with her? Were you producing any vignettes or skits or anything?
I did. I shot all the stuff out in Malibu with Pam and Diesel and Lex and Randy and everybody, and easy, wonderful young lady to work with. Anything
interesting or notable happened on those vignettes?
She was great to work with.
You said a minute ago that she was the most recognizable celebrity in the world. Who was the second most recognizable celebrity?
I was the second most recognizable athlete. When you go into the celebrity world, I might have been like number 3 or 4, but I was definitely number 2.
Interesting fact about this Rumble match: 7 guys last 25 seconds or less. Timothy Well, 25 seconds. Bushwhacker Butch, 19 seconds. Jacob Blue, 17 seconds. Bob Backlund, 16 seconds. Bushwhacker Luke, 12 seconds. Owen Hart and Mo, 3 seconds each. And another interesting fact, I guess, 60% of the entrants in this Rumble, they're gone by the end of the year. Pretty remarkable. Where do you rank Royal Rumble 1995 out of all the Rumbles you've been a part of? Don't say top 5, because we'll know you're lying.
No, but you know what? I mean, it ranks up there. I don't know as far as a number, but I thought it was a pretty damn good Rumble that held up from start to finish on the matches and the story of the whole night. You got the Diesel Bret shit, and then the Rumble itself, which were the 2 big stories. And you got to start a celebrity deal with Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam Bigelow. So all these years later watching it, I thought it still worked and still all those stories held up.
Well, what else held up is you guys asking questions for us here on Twitter. We took to Twitter and said, if you had a question for this one, fire it away. Let's do some rapid fire, Bruce. Are you ready?
I guess so.
I want to mention on our way here, the cheapest and easiest way to support us here on the show is to go to youtube.com/something to wrestle. Now, please go there, hit the subscribe button, click the notifications bell. You'll get notified anytime we upload some new clips. And it is the easiest and best way to introduce the show to the friends in your life who maybe are wrestling fans or used to be, because there's some small bite-sized episodes in there where it's just a clip, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, and not the 2 or 3 hour commitment that sometimes these shows are. Let's get to Twitter here. You can participate and ask a question next week at Prichard Show. Just look for the post asking for questions and coming your way. Mayhem writes, is it true Dick Murdoch was going to be offered a part-time contract on the roster to have more dates? What was his perceived health at this event?
As far as I know, Dick's health was fine. And Dick, I think, was looking to be able to do something, whether it was working with young talent, help some young talent. But this was nothing more than a cameo and bring Dick in and have some fun. Bring Dick in and have some fun.
Yeah, we're not doing Blue Chew here. Charlie Thrower wants to know, I don't think it's been discussed on the show, but what's going on with the talent backstage during the Rumble match while they wait for their spot? Are they all lined up in a single file line? Do they huddle around Gorilla? Are they hanging out in the locker room, etc.? I got to tell you, it fucking tickles me to no end that they're all just standing there single file like it's a goddamn fire drill. Tell everybody where they are during the match.
In a single file line down the hallway.
That fucking tickles me.
With strict instructions, no fighting.
Oh, God. Bacabella writes, we know that 95 was a transition year for the company and houses were down. With all the trends in place from previous years and no official developmental system in place just yet, it begs the question, How big's Batista's dick? Still thinking about it? Charlie Thrower writes in storyline, it was said that Bart Gunn was injured in a rodeo accident. I gotta tell you, watching it back, that really cracked me up. How did Gunn injure himself?
In a rodeo accident.
Be specific.
He loved rodeo. Bull riding.
Threw him off.
You know.
Lots of questions about Titan Time. Did you guys ever run the clock exactly on the nose? Did Vince ever care? Was it on anyone's radar, or was it just sort of whatever?
Does anybody really care?
Yeah. I mean, we get a lot of questions about it.
Yes, we run the clock. It's on the screen.
Sure. David Lane wants to know, was Pam Anderson ever in any serious discussion about being signed to be a more permanent part of the WWE?
No. She was not.
Dave writes in, you've often said that Kevin Nash worked best when he was working with smaller, more technical opponents. Who do you think gave Kevin his best matches? Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels?
Bret Hart. And the reason is because I think Shawn was very giving to Kevin, and Shawn always was out there to, fly and do whatever he could to make the best match. And I think that because Shawn and Diesel were friends, I think Shawn sometimes gave a little too much. But I think that Bret had the best matches and got the most out of Diesel.
Omar writes, we've only ever had one 40-man Royal Rumble. You think with the ever expanding roster inclusion of NXT as a brand themselves, that would have become the norm? Why do you think it's always remained 30?
30 is a good number, and an hour is the time, man. I just think 40 would be a nightmare, I think.
James Kirby wants to know, why did Diesel never get a clean win over Bret?
He did. Diesel beat Bret. Not here, but he did. I don't know where. Don't ask me the date. Oh, well, the date was, I'm sure a clip from her she could be able to tell us, but no, I'm sure he did.
Michael
Myers. Hey tweets to add hey, it's Conrad.
No, don't do that. Cardboard Icons writes, no questions, just a comment. Pam Anderson in that white outfit. Thank you, Vince. Signed 15-year-old me. Michael Myers wants to know, was there any talent or staff that was overly fixated with Pam Anderson? People are always fascinated by the celebrity encounters. Anything stand out about this visit with Pam Anderson?
No, God, Pam was through the Royal Rumble promotion. Pam was fabulous. She was engaged. She was, just there for everything. And she took direction. She was just fun to work with. And then, she changed a little bit, with Tommy. I think, she was in La La Land a little bit for WrestleMania, but up until this point, and I enjoyed working with her agent manager, and they were good to work with. Sometimes you get celebrities don't want to do anything and want, this kind of dressing room with this kind of bubbly and all this other bullshit. And she wasn't like that at all. She was down to earth. She watched the matches. She was friendly to everybody. She wasn't, stuck up, sitting in her dressing room, not talking to anybody. She took pictures with everyone and was just a real pro through and through.
I can't believe this is real, but we discovered this several weeks ago or months ago at this point. But Danielle writes in, I don't know that I've ever asked it specifically. Why was Scott Hall never in a Royal Rumble match? It does seem really weird. that everybody was in one except him?
God, I have no idea. Never?
I need you to just pretend that he had a irrational fear of clocks or drawing numbers. Kind of come up with some bullshit that we just pass along here.
Let me examine that, and I'll answer that next week.
Man, I'm looking forward to next week because we're talking about the Radicals. If you're out of the loop on this, man, go back and revisit our show in the archives. It's an emotional roller coaster. You hear Bruce go through, all of the emotions, man. He's happy, he's sad, he's mad, he's everything in between. And, it's going to be an emotional show next week. I'm looking forward to it. Hope you are too. Hit the subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review if you think we've earned it. And don't forget to support our sponsors. The easiest way to support us is to go to youtube.com/something to wrestle. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and be sure to click the notification bell. The rumor and innuendo is, we're going to be trying to grow that YouTube channel this year. Love to have you check out some shirts over at brucepritchard.com. Of course, we can save you some money at savewithconrad.com. Even show you how to skip a couple of house payments. If you'd like to advertise on our show, go to advertisewithconrad.com, which will be live by the time you hear this. And speaking of advertising, we need to thank our title sponsor effectively today, and that's Steven Singer. Specifically, IHateStevenSinger.com. It's a no-brainer this Valentine's Day. If you're looking for the perfect gift, something that will last forever, something unique, something special, how about a real long stem American Beauty rose that's been deeply dipped in 24 karat gold? It's going to come with a personalized love note from you, all in a really cool box, and it's shipped for free, starting at just $59. You can't beat this. Don't overthink it. Don't get it wrong. This looks like it's $590, but in fact, it's just $59. What are you waiting for? Go see how cool this is for yourself. It's not a gimmick. It's a great deal. It's IHateStevenSinger.com. That's IHateStevenSinger.com. Until next week, he is at Bruce Prichard. I am at Hey, it's Conrad, and we are out of time. We'll see you next week right here on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
It's time to have lunch. Donde es el Pancho Villa?
I'm looking forward to you stopping that. I'm over it.
No, I'm not.
I miss Shaka Khan.
Yeah, she's old.
So are you.
I'm not.
R2.
I'm not.
R2.
Old enough to have lunch with Pancho Villa.
Who booked that shit?
I just did.
You're booking a lot of shit these days.
You know.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.